reading before bed. So I was reading a book about insects. Now I'm reading a book that's a detective fantasy novel, which is escapist, which I'm excited about. So that was cool. It's a good book. I like the book. It's fun to read. There's lots of them, so there's lots of future books to read. And I slept great. So night was good. Had a nice walk with the dog this morning. He's just very well behaved. And the reason why he's so well behaved is because we disciplined him. And I interact with a lot of dogs in the neighborhood that have been given these chest collars. So there's nothing around the throat. So these dogs you're holding the leash and it's chest collar, right? So these dogs have there's no consequence to their behavior. So if they're jumping and pulling as hard as they can, the owner is like, don't do that. But at the same time, they're pulling on the dog's chest, which the dog is not hindered by at all. And so the dog is just out of control. There's a fair number of dogs in our neighborhood that are out of control, and their owners have embraced the idea that if they're just kinder to the dog, I guess, that the dog will understand how to behave. I don't know. But there's a lot of dogs that are just out of control. And there are these, in particular, there are these kids and moms that are walking these dogs. And whenever the dogs see anything that excites them, they just act nuts. And if they ever see any other dogs and they want to play with them, they go absolutely nuts. So there are several people that when they walk their animal, they can't go anywhere, or they have to turn around when they see other people or other dogs because their dogs are so badly behaved. It's kind of interesting. But anyway, Marley is great. He's just fantastic, and he wants to be friends with everybody. And he saw a kid, and I let him off the leash now. We saw a young kid who goes on the walk kind of the same time we do, and Marley went up to him to be friends, and the kid was like, no, please call your dog. So I was like, Marley, get over here. So Marley turned around and came over. But other than that, walking him is just a joy. Anyway, that's the morning. So let's read the stanza. It's one of 10. Okay, we're 2 weeks in. This is 2 weeks out of 23 weeks, 10 stanzas out of 114. The 10 stanzas is great. I need to get into my SoundCloud account and start posting the other times I've done the Art of Peace into Facebook so you can see it. But this number 10 stanza is really, if you find it in the Armor Down SoundCloud, it's worth a listen. I re-listened to it this morning, and it really speaks to this whole idea of you never step into the same body twice, and you can kind of see it. I'm a little bit crazy, maybe just in general, but you listen to that podcast and you'll see what I'm talking about. All right. Art of Peace, stanza 10. All the principles of heaven and earth are living inside of you. Life itself is the truth, and this will never change. Everything in heaven and earth breathes. Breath is the thread that ties creation together. When the myriad variations of the universal breath can be sensed, the individual techniques of the Art of Peace can be born. Just let that sit. Here, I'll read it again. Just let it sit. Don't try to figure it out. All the principles of heaven and earth. All the principles. That's key. And when he says heaven and earth, it's not religious. It's like earth is what we can conceive of. Heaven is beyond what we conceive of. Heaven and earth. Life itself is the truth. So all things exist in heaven and earth, and life itself is the truth. So there's an element to all things exist, and life will show you what the truth is about those things, just in time. And that will never change. Everything in heaven and earth breathes. So it has an animation. It has a movement, a flow, everything. Breath is the thread that ties creation together. So our breath, our individual breathing, and all these things They directly correlate to each other. And if you were aware, you would see that at every given moment, your breath is making subtle changes to reflect what you're experiencing. When the myriad variations in the universal breath can be sensed, the individual techniques of the art of peace are born. That's really important. When you start to sense that relationship, those little subtle boom, boom, booms, that's when the practice starts to become obvious. I'll get into more stories later. But anyway, let's practice on that. Let's get yourself squared away. Let's tame the mind. First bell. First bell, sight, sound, taste, touch, smell. It feels good for me to just close my eyes right away, so I'm just going to close them. Now, if you've got your eyes closed, you can kind of follow my lead here. I'm going to look around inside my closed eye for different variations of light and shadow. So, I got a lot of light to my right, so if I turn my eyes under my eyelids to the right, I can see the light kind of behind my eyelids. To the left, there's less. So if I put my attention into my eyes, there's still a lot going on. And then I'm going to change. Boom. Sound. What do I hear? Bird sounds. Refrigerator sounds. Lots of silence. Temperature. My left leg's over my right foot doing crisscross applesauce, and I can feel my right big toe mound is warm. Can feel under my left and right hand. Taste in the mouth. Tiny bit of sourness. Tiny, tiny, tiny. Really mostly neutral. Smell. Hint of cardboard. Hint of cut grass. Ground. What's your body touching? What's underneath you? Pelvis. Front of the pelvis. Back of the pelvis. Left and right side. Core. Heart space. Throat. Top of the head. Whole spine. Notice your breathing as it is. Make it smaller. What's the smallest breath you can take without feeling out of breath? Now, take your breath really big. Encourage your breathing to be really big for the next several breaths. Now, think about something that you find really, really exciting, super exciting, really exciting. Notice your breath. Now, make your breath even. Notice something really, imagine something really sad, something that you think of that's really, really sad. Notice your breath. Even that back out. Okay, now think of politics. Think of politics. Anything involving politics. Notice your breath. Even that out. Last one. Divinity, God, heaven. Think about anything involving divinity or God and heaven. Even that out. Okay, so here's my kind of interpretation of stanza 10. What is inside of you will come out. What you surround yourself with will become part of you. your understanding of how much you matter will be reflected in how much you pay attention to this process. A simple version of this reality can be studied by examining the process of your breath. So I titled this stanza, or this practice, "You Can Never Step into the Same Body Twice." It's a play off of the I think it's Zen or Buddhist phrase, "You can never step in the same river twice." And the idea is that there's always change going on. It's just constant. And it's never the same. It's always a little bit different. Our minds, our stories, can be articulated in a way that makes us think things are staying the same. But that's all just kind of myth, and it falls apart very easily. The reality of the situation is that there's constant change. And the goal of the practice is to start to recognize those changes. And as you recognize them for yourself, you'll begin to see where your art of peace practice shows up in relation to those things. And it's unique for everybody, because everybody has their own kind of relationship to them, first themselves, and then to life. And I think for many people, the first relationship to self is very wounded. I know mine was, and I know a lot of the students I work with have a similar experience, a very wounded relationship to self, largely because the self has been modeled after what culture wants. And because culture is as flawed as any other culture, it's typically not full or fulfilling over time. And so when that all falls apart, and then when trauma hits and all this other kind of stuff, the relationship to self can become pretty rough. And if you have a very rough relationship to yourself, the experience of what you have around you or what shows up is all going to be kind of filtered through your relationship to yourself and your own self-worth. And mostly you'll just notice disruptions in that context, and you'll miss the subtle variations. And so what he's saying in the stanza is that those subtle variations, including your poor relationship to self, are all just part of the experience. It's all okay. It's all normal. It's all appropriate. It's all okay. And what that means is once you get to that it's okay, and you start noticing that there's just variation every day, and there's these little subtle shifts every single day, and if you start to pay attention to them with a conscious awareness, with presence, non-judgmental present tense awareness, if you start paying attention to them from that perspective, you'll start to kind of peel the pieces away. And when you start to peel the pieces away, your relationship to self will evolve, and your relationship to others will evolve. And your relationship to self is basically your beginning of relationship to others. And then once you start recognizing that your relationship to others is directly tied to your relationship to yourself, you will see the relationship between you and all these things. They're all alive. They're all active. They're all participating, whether you realize it or not. And kind of what he says, where they're participating is at the breath. Every single thing that you do is impacting your breath. You probably don't notice it, but it is. And when you start to notice it, you'll start to realize that there are all these opportunities to practice the art of peace inside these moments. I did it yesterday. I did it yesterday with my wife. I did it yesterday with a student. A student did it with her trauma. It's just it's happening all the time. But mostly, people are unaware of this. So it's just ignorance. It's not even ignorance. People don't know what they don't know. And then it's the culture. Our culture feeds us, and it depends on how much you eat. Is how well you'll kind of recognize these things. So anyway, I would love to just hear your thoughts on what you think about the stanza. I mean, what stands out for you? What jumps out? Do you think what I'm saying is just a load of crap, and why? Anyway, it's okay. It doesn't matter either way, but I'd love to hear from you. It's such a joy to interact with, you know, just the Armor Down community, and it's going to be growing. I'm kind of on hold for the next kind of iteration of growth because I'm waiting for my manufacturing of meditation cushions to come back online. But once that happens, there'll be more going on. So anyway, let's see who's in the room. Say hi to. Oh, where's my chat function? Anyway, if you're here, hello. Good to see you. Yeah, 2 weeks down. Isn't that neat? 2 weeks. 2 weeks. Deuces, right? 2 weeks into the art of peace. Awesome. See you on Monday.